part of the, I tell you, man, part of what we've been seeing in the media and part of the things that we complain about, in our cable media, CNN's, MSNBC's, Fox News, all of them, right, is we complain about the media bias. And what I've been learning, guys, is that us as Bernie supporters or Tulsi supporters or Yang supporters or whatever you support, whatever you're into, Julian Castro, whatever's your thing, everyone complains. Yeah. Look. I've been learning as I get out of my bubble more that there are people complaining from the Kamala Harris group. Her supporters complain she didn't get enough coverage. And there are people complaining from Julian Castro's camp that he didn't get enough coverage. Do you know that Beto O'Rourke's people complained that he didn't get enough coverage either? And when he did get it, it was negative? Yeah, like we think it's just our candidate. But if you go and frequent other groups, you'll see they have the same complaints as you. Now, there is a thing called reality. All right? There is an independent analysis because there's this thing called numbers, which will tell the story of who really is getting the short end of the stick. But I just want you to know that media is doing a lot of candidates pretty badly. And certain candidates are benefiting and other candidates are not. Check this out.
It's different. I don't need to go see South Bend. I saw 100 different cities when I was HUD secretary, right. And I was mayor of a city. I have a lot of respect for Mayor Buttigieg, but I do think that our experience level is different. I don't need to go see South Bend. I saw 100 different cities when I was HUD secretary, right. And I was mayor of a city that's 14 times larger than South Bend. In fact, we could almost fit South Bend in our Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Right?
The next Democratic presidential debate, hosted by MSNBC and the Washington Post in Atlanta, is just 10 days away. And these are the candidates who have qualified so far. Noticeably absent from the lineup is President Obama's former HUD secretary, Julian Castro, who has struggled to gain traction in the national polls. A recent Telemundo poll even found that Castro, the sole Latino candidate, is in a three-way tie for fifth place among Latino voters with only 2% support. So why is that? Is it him or is it us? Are he and other lower polling candidates failing to properly compete for attention in an extremely crowded field? Or is the media writ large failing to give all of the candidates equal attention because our profession has already declared the election a race between a small number of top-tier candidates? It's worth noting that even with the most diverse field ever, the top four candidates in the polls are all white, and with the exception of Senator Warren, are all men. And at least one of those candidates is promoting the narrative that this race is even narrower than it looks.
I think this is getting to be a two-way. It's early to say it. I'm not saying it is a two-way, but I think...
But you see that. You see it's coming into focus, you and Warren.
Yeah, and certainly a world where we're getting somewhere is that world, where it's coming down to the two of us.
Buttigieg later walked back that comment, saying it didn't come out right. Joining me now is Midwin Charles, a civil trial and criminal defense attorney with Midwin Charles & Associates. Maria Teresa Kumar, president of Voto.
All right. So I just cut it off there. I don't want to play too much of it. We don't want any problems. Plus, basically what they come up to is what they start addressing is the issue of coverage and who gets more coverage and who gets more favorable coverage and who gets more negative coverage and is this on purpose or what is it? And the reality is that cable networks they favor what they think people are going to watch more often, and that may leave out other candidates. Check out this document. Or this graphic.
I don't need to go see.
Damn it. Here we go. Cable coverage. Cable coverage of candidates. Share 15-second cable news clips mentioning each candidate week of 1020 to 1027. So as you know, this is kind of old. But I don't know if it's changed that much. 39% or almost 40% of the time they were talking about Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren 23% of the time and Bernie Sanders 17% of the time. Tulsi Gabbard got a lot of coverage at 15.4% of the time. And it kind of goes downhill from there. And so in the panel they discuss these things kind of over and over. I think I have another graphic that we could take a look at here. Here we go. Also, MSNBC is the most influential network among liberals, and it's ignoring Bernie Sanders. This is an article by InTheseTimes.com pointing this out, how often the three candidates were discussed and logged whether the coverage was positive, negative, or neutral. And as you can see here, positive is in green and the negative is in the black. So as you can see here on MSNBC, look at the analysts, you can see how much they talked about Bernie in a positive manner. Rachel Maddow appears to be the only one who talked about, Bernie much in a positive manner. And then Elizabeth Warren looks like she's getting a lot of love from Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell and Ari Mabler, and pretty much everyone has been giving Elizabeth Warren favorable coverage. And if you look here, you see that Joe Biden is next, and then, he was getting some kind of spotty coverage from Chris Hayes and from Ari Melber. But Bernie's pretty much in the doghouse with, Brian Williams and Chris Matthews and, to a lesser extent, Chris Hayes and Ari Melber. So, the favorability coverage is kind of spotty there for Bernie Sanders. And look, this is why I was saying it matters. It matters not just how much coverage you get, but what kind of coverage you get, right? That's why I was always kind of amazed at the way that Donald Trump was able to take negative coverage and make it positive by leaning into saying things that were crazy. He'd say pretty much anything. It didn't have to be factual. It was just something he knew would keep the attention on him. And then he'd say something that he knew that the audience would react to. And once again, it wasn't so much about accuracy as it was about conveying a feeling like, I'm a fighter against the establishment. And that's what people walked away with. And once you plant the seed that the media can't be trusted, well, then the fact checkers don't matter. So that's the brilliance, if there is brilliance that can be considered about Donald Trump, it would have to be his ability to play in and lean into the negative coverage that he was receiving. And he received a lot of it, Johnson. So I saw a tweet that went out. It was about Bernie Sanders, and it was about coverage. And here it is. Here goes some of that. Bernie's lack of coverage. Well, this is actually a video of Faiz, campaign manager for Bernie Sanders, talking about some things about Bernie that we don't hear often.
So here we are in the fourth quarter. I'm a bit of a sports fan, so I've been telling people internally here on staff, 4 fingers up in the air for sports fans up there, win the fourth quarter. Everything that we have done up until this point for 3 quarters has positioned us to do extremely well down the home stretch. We're turning the last corner and down the stretch we come, and it's a sprint to the end, and this is where our muscle has to flex hardest. And so we have a few, while we don't have the media always at our side in support of this campaign, we do have a lot of other advantages that other campaigns don't have, and that's how we're going to exercise. So one is we've got a volunteer force that is unrivaled in presidential history. No campaign, think about this, no campaign in presidential history up at this point has had as many individual volunteers and contributions as this campaign has. That's amazing. That's historic. You're part of something historic. We are building it together. That means there's no campaign that has more individual contributions than Donald Trump's campaign. We are the only one. The Bernie Sanders campaign is the only one who's got more individual contributions than Donald Trump's at this point in time. Think about that. When you think about which candidate is best positioned to defeat Donald Trump, that proof is in the pudding right there. We are building this movement, this multiracial working class movement for justice. It's right there, right before people's eyes if they cared to truly pay attention to it and assess the electability of this candidate.
That's right. So when we talk about Bernie Sanders coalition, we're talking about all types of people. We're talking about a very diverse, the most diverse coalition. And this is something that I was trying to point out when I got into a back and forth at Politicon with a couple folks. Bernie Sanders has the most donations, most individual donations. So when we listen to these pollings and they got a sample size of 1,000 or 3,000 people, I'm like, well, maybe in that sample size there's more people that like Elizabeth Warren or like Joe Biden for whatever reason. But when we're talking about the masses of people, what's more evidence of being strong with the people than people giving money? It's pretty, you got to be pretty, into your candidate if you're giving him more donations, individual donations, not the amount of money, the number of donors. Now, I'm not saying it definitely, absolutely, 100% will transfer into the polls, but I got to imagine people that give their money are pretty motivated to come out and vote for you. I know people, someone argue, you argue against that, but no. So that's the thing. It's not about the amount of money, it's the number of donors and the number of volunteers. Number of volunteers, number of donors, number of offices, infrastructure. So Bernie has a lot of things going for him, even though in the numbers, based on the stats, he didn't get the amount of coverage that Joe Biden gets. In fact, it was almost 3 times the amount. Joe Biden got 3 times the amount of coverage as Bernie Sanders. And Joe Biden got twice the amount of coverage as Elizabeth Warren. But Elizabeth Warren got more positive coverage than Biden and Bernie Sanders. But who's getting the raw end? Bernie on all fronts. Amount of coverage and amount of positive coverage. So the fact that this is a race that's now heating up, the fact that right now we're seeing these endorsements come out that are favorable, they matter. Everything matters from here on out. The fact that Deval Patrick's in this race now, and they're saying he's in it to stop Elizabeth Warren, I don't buy that for a second. I hope you don't buy it either. That's not who. Elizabeth Warren has offices in a couple of places. Bernie has them all across the country. Who you think really is a threat? The person who nearly beat, and some would argue did beat Hillary Clinton, or someone who didn't get in the race last time. This time has taken a lot of the policy positions or policies directly, lifted them from Bernie Sanders, or the actual real thing, Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders is the real threat. So there you have it, Johnson. So regardless of what the polls say, you do the math in your own head. What do you think matters more? What some poster says, what some talking head on TV says, or what the donors say? And remember, in all the polls that I cover, I try to remind people, because I had a couple comments from people like, Tim, you want to believe the polls when it's positive for Bernie, and when it's not positive, you want to say they don't matter. No, I'm not saying that at all. First of all, when they're polling people, typically they're only polling likely Democratic voters, people who voted for the Democrats last time. You know who they're not polling? They're not polling independents. Did you know that Bernie polls very well with independents? So his strongest block are independent voters, and they're not even talking to him. They won't do that until the general. In the primary, they don't poll. The Democratic Party will not poll outside of its own party. And what if you voted for Trump last cycle because you didn't like Hillary, but you really voted for Hillary? And that happened in a lot of places. There are a lot of places where people who voted for Trump only voted for Trump after voting for Obama twice. So those people will likely come back and vote if they don't like what Trump has done. And I got a feeling a lot of people are going, hey, what happened with all the change? What happened with all the tax breaks we were supposed to get? You gave them to the corporations. What's the Democrats got? And they're willing. They're open. They are open to looking at Bernie Sanders. So those people are not even being polled. And then also remember that I think in New Hampshire, 60% of people hadn't even made their minds up yet. So the polls are deceitful. That's why I say we can't put all our stock in the polls. But one thing that keeps me very optimistic is number of campaign offices, record-setting number of volunteers, record-setting number of individual donors. That is not faked. You can't pad volunteers. You can't pad number of donations. And that's not about sample size. That's about actual butts in the seats. So, all right, guys. So, cut up. Get it together. Lift your head up. Stand tall. Brenda's got a baby. And that baby is Bernie Sanders. That wasn't good because bad things happen with Brenda's baby. Forget that. Ambitions of a rider. Did you enjoy that content? I know you did. You got great taste, Johnson. What can I say? Become a member of the Tim Black Wolf Pack today right here on YouTube or go to patreon.com, Tim's Take Live. And you'll get free stuff, special stuff, secret stuff. Do it today. Wolf Pack.